Well, hello there everyone. You've tuned in UXW Bill, and in this particular quick little video, we're going to be revisiting two old friends that we haven't seen in a while. The first being this Sony DCR TRV-280 Digital 8 Handycam that I used to shoot the majority of my videos with. This camcorder has been parked in favor of a few newer models, namely because it doesn't have an image stabilizer when shooting in widescreen mode. But one thing that it does have over the Canon FS200 I've been using lately is far, far better low-light performance. In particular, it doesn't suffer that annoying image trailing problem that the Canon suffers from. And this thing also has a far better video light as well as night shot capability, which comes in very handy for a lot of the things that I shoot video about, or at least every so often when I'm shooting video. Second thing we haven't heard from in a while is my mother's 2002 Buick Park Avenue, also known as Ruby. Ruby has been laid up for the past couple of months with a problem that is very common on these GM Series 2 3800 V6 engines. Yep, the intake manifold gasket finally failed. This car has another problem that I'll get to in just a moment, which led to my mother driving the 2012 Impala instead. But while my dad was driving this particular car, that's when the intake manifold gaskets finally began to go, and it finally started losing copious quantities of coolant. A situation that, if you leave it unchecked, will eventually result in severe damage to the lower end of the engine when the oil gets contaminated. It mess up the bearings and stuff along those lines, and you just don't want that to happen. Luckily, we caught this while the car was very definitely still drivable, definitely in the very early stages of this particular problem. And in this case, it doesn't look like it's actually the manifold that went bad, although I'm not sure. This is the first one I've ever personally diagnosed, so I could be wrong about this. It seems that the gasket is what went wrong here. We'll go ahead and look at this very closely with the scanning electron Handycam, although it seems not to want to focus on it. There we go. I don't have enough hands to put this thing in manual focus mode. But I think you can see the places on this gasket where it's been compromised. Maybe it was just the gasket. We're not taking any chances whatsoever. Not only do we have a new gasket, but we also have the new revised assembly intake manifold cover. I don't see any cracks in this. I don't think the Keykeeper said there were any that met his eye, but maybe they're smaller than what the average person could see. I don't really know for sure. Now this thing looks kind of dirty. Maybe a little carboned up, I don't know. There's the throttle body assembly, and it's certainly in need of a good cleaning, which it will have before we put all of this stuff back together. My mother has really been missing this car. She says that the Impala is serviceable transportation, but she doesn't like it anywhere near as much as she does this car. She thinks this car is just better all the way across the board, and I'd have to agree. Outside of a decent powertrain with a nice little bark to it and plenty of get up and go when you get on it, which this car is a little soft about, the 3.6 engine in the Impala, that's about the best part of it. The rest of the car is pretty mediocre and cheap. Certainly doesn't feel anywhere near as classy as this Buick Park Avenue, and I think General Motors made a mistake when they discontinued production of these cars and the 3800 series of V6 engines. Although it's my understanding they had trouble getting it to meet emissions in the state of California at least. The main reason my mother quit driving this car has the most to do with wheel problems. Hopefully this won't kill the battery when I turn it on. Hopefully it'll prove illuminating enough. But this poor tire is resting right on the ground because all of this car's alloy wheels, save for one, are leaking air. This is another way in which winter in the state of Illinois gets even with your car. This car's body is still in pretty much fantastic condition, and the only reason this particular wheel is still holding air, we got a heck of a deal on this from a junkyard. Most places wanted between $75 to $150 for a new wheel. We found one for $50, and although they said it was coming standard ground freight, it was delivered to us the next day. I was extremely impressed. Can't remember the name of the junkyard, otherwise I would definitely give them a plug in this video because that's some service. And the rim arrived in great shape. Like I say, it's the only one on this car that's working properly. Now if we could just find 3 more. We've thought about putting aftermarket wheels on this car, but the truth of the matter is, I think that most all aftermarket wheel designs that are shiny like this car's wheels, I think they have a bad habit of looking very, very goofy. And of course, you know, there are steelies, and steelies are very plain, but steelies don't belong on a Buick Park Avenue. No, if you're going to have a Buick Park Avenue, you need to do something a little nicer with its wheels. So this car will be returning to life in the near future. It's a little after 3 o'clock in the morning as I'm filming this particular video. And it's my understanding that the Keykeeper and my father are going to start work on this tomorrow. I may be joining in for some of the fun as well, though I was not here for the initial disassembly. If I happen to be so fortunate, I'll try to get some video of this car put all the way back together, and maybe even some footage of them working on it. But like I say, this was supposed to be a short little video, and I already think it's grown to be about 6 or 7 minutes long at this point, so I better wrap it up. We'll see if there's anything else that happens after this that's particularly noteworthy. For anybody wondering, this car had about 190,000 miles, maybe a little more, on the odometer at the time of the engine's failure, or rather the intake manifold, and its gaskets failure. We're getting ready to have our grand run-up of the newly repaired 2002 Buick Park Avenue.
Alright, you got clean hands, I don't.
Want me to crank it up?
Yeah. Let me do a real quick inspection, make sure everything's good.
Alrighty.
Don't do anything.
I won't do anything. Alright everybody, here comes our grand inaugural run-up. We don't know what's going to happen for sure. Only that we think we found all the fuel injector leaks and stuff.
Before you start it,
yes,
just turn the key on. I'll check for leaks again, and then I'll give you the thumbs up, alright?
Okay. We'll put this here and hopefully it'll capture. Yeah, it should capture it pretty well.
And then get my stuff off the roof, please.
Absolutely.
Thanks, man.
Alright. Fuel system pressure build, take 1.
Okay, let me check. I'm going in. I don't see any leaks. Go ahead and see if it'll start.
Okay. Just shut it off. Just let it idle. Power steering sounds a little low. Yeah, it's probably low.
All the systems look good on the dash.
They did, as far as I could tell. I was cycling through the gauge readout. I don't know what it is about these 3800 engines, but they all like to burn oil off of the rear manifold. Probably a seal going bad.
Their valve covers leak like a son of a gun. My Pontiac does it too.
That'll be the next thing we have to fiddle with.
I'm just glad my Pontiac doesn't have plastic intake on it.
You sure it doesn't, being as it's a Series 2?
It's supercharged.
There'll be an intake beneath that, won't there?
A lower, and that'll be metal. Just
I
like
think
how this one's metal.
I think you're far too optimistic.
Yeah, I know in GM.
We're flushing the cooling system out pretty thoroughly with water in the event that there's any crud floating around in here that needs to be dealt with. And then we'll go ahead and fill it up with coolant and call it done if everything seems to check out. See if we got any warning lights on in here. I don't think that we do.
I would like you to go ahead and back it out. But let me get into a position where I can spot you first.
We're going to need to move something. There's an ashtray underneath the car.
Okay, then let me get a broom.
As you can see, the Keykeeper is very optimistic about the success of this repair.
Yeah, right.
Here's something delightfully and amusingly ironic. How is it possible that the coolant temperature is actually colder than the ambient air. I mean, these bottles of water have been sitting in the garage. Okay, it's a rhetorical question, but I am pleased to see that this thing's still working great. Alright, it's been just a couple of minutes now. The coolant temperature has come up nicely. It appears I'm going to have to perform the reset procedure on the climate control system because it's only blowing cold air. Now we're going to see if I can get out of here, preferably without taking anything off in the process. There, you can watch that. I'll watch what I'm doing. Those of you who want to yell at me for using the camcorder while I'm driving, right now you have an excellent argument.
Hi, you got some candy?
And there, in case anybody happens to be wondering, is the actual mileage on the car at this particular point in time. Well, several hours later, and I think we might finally be to the point where we're about ready to put this one to bed, folks. Got the cooling system refilled, don't seem to have any leaks. A couple of minor leaks around the rear-facing side of the fuel injector rail, but nothing too serious. We have a seal kit for that. We've replaced a couple of them already. Now, if it had been me doing the work, to be brutally honest about it, though it is absolutely not my intention to badmouth the Keykeeper, in for a penny, in for a pound, I would have just gone ahead and done all the seals on the fuel injectors so I would have known for sure that they weren't leaking. I think this car is just about ready for its triumphant return to the road once again. Have to do something about these wheels, of course. We've got them all pumped up and holding air right now, but they won't hold air for too long. Fun bit of trivia for you B-body enthusiasts, since we have a Chevy Caprice station wagon sitting over there, the 93. This underhood light on this Buick is identical to the one on the Caprice. So those of you who are always out combing the junkyards, looking for something that you can use on your B-body, that particular light assembly appears to be identical. Only difference I can see is that on this car, at least the marker lights have to be on before it'll actually work, where the Caprice probably has a mercury switch in the hood, so when you lift it up the light comes on no matter what, or at least it would if mine didn't happen to be burned out. One of these days I'm going to go ahead and get an LED replacement for that. But I think that's just about all I can say for this particular car. We're just filling up the cooling system now, making sure we've got all the air burped out of it. And like I say, I think it's road ready once again, or at least very, very close to, once we get the wheels sorted out. So thank you all very much for watching, and by all means certainly do feel free to leave a comment if you happen to have one. By the way, that loud roaring noise you hear, that's actually the heating fan. Got the heater running fully wide open right now. I discovered there is in fact a way to do that without turning on the air conditioning. If you simply push the button labeled vent on the climate controls, then that bypasses the air conditioning compressor and you can run the heat to your heart's content.